What's the most painful way to die? Shotgun blast? Speeding bus? Drowning? But for many, burning alive is the most unimaginable fate. In 1994, Chris survived an industrial accident that left him with burns over 69% of his body. Just living defied all odds. In Call Me Chris, Chris Aiken shares his harrowing journey of survival, recovery, and the brutal honesty of facing life after the flames. It's raw, real, and a testament to human resilience. Get your copy of Call Me Chris today at chrisaiken.net or on Amazon. Witness the power of determination.
Hey everybody, this is Johnny Gioeli from Hardline, Axel Rudy Pell, Crush 40, and so many other projects. 95 albums. Can you believe that? But you're watching me right here on CMS TV. Rock out, people.
From the 74 jailbreak release, it's AC/DC there with You Ain't Got a Hold on Me, Bitch. That one going out by request. Gary Scadra. Just before that, we heard Iron Maiden with Hooks in You. And we also heard that Irish metal band for Miles Mullally, Stereo Nasty with Black Widow. So there you go, guys.
There we go.
And you didn't even have to give me a super chat to do that.
Imagine that. You didn't have to pay for that.
Look at that. I let words come out of my mouth that went to your ears, and it didn't even cost you nothing.
Well, maybe next time you should charge them.
I should charge them.
Nice. Well, dude, we have a guest waiting in the wings.
All right. Very good. Well, why don't you do the honors and introduce our esteemed guest?
I will. As you know, we get a lot of books, or a lot of books end up here. And I'll just leave it as there's a lot of books that end up here. You know, there a lot of them are not that great, but some of them are absolutely spectacular. This one is absolutely spectacular. I don't even think you have to be a fan of this band to like this book.
Right.
Here it is. I'll hold it up. It's Rush at 50.
Yeah, it's like a big coffee table book.
It is. It's a nice hardback book. It has a bunch of great stories in it. Some are for like the hardcore fans. Some are for I really haven't listened to Rush before fans. You know, I think either side can get a good feel for the band from this, and it's a well done book. So, you know, we'll start there, but we'll bring on our guest who wrote it and put it together, and obviously had to research 50 years of Rush to do it. He is the author of Rush at 50. He is Daniel Bukszpan. Daniel, how are you, man?
Good. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, well, it's good to have you, man. It's good to talk to you after getting this book, and I know you heard some of the talk up, and it's not bullshit, man. I mean, you know, it's one thing to be easy and say, hey, this book's great. Here's the guy that wrote it, you know. Yeah. This, I mean, I'll tell you straight up, I am not the biggest Rush fan in the world. I don't hate them. I mean, anything I've ever heard I like, but I don't go out of my way saying, you know what, I got to hear track 7 of 2112 or whatever. You know, I'm not that guy. But this book, for a lot of reasons, reading it, I'm not all the way through it yet, but reading through it, it really does add some clarity where on a lot of the records, especially where I didn't have clarity on what they were doing. So why don't we start here with this book and maybe give us a background on you and how you came to writing a book over the massive history of Rush.
Oh, well, I mean, you know, just to start off, I mean, I'm a fan.
Okay.
You know, it all kind of starts from there. You know, I've written about them before. I wrote the book, The Encyclopedia of Heavy Metal, in 2003, and they got like a page in there.
Okay.
And I contributed to album reviews to someone else's book about Rush. But this is the first time I'm getting to do like, all, self-contained, one book, one dude. I've wanted to do something about them for years. When Neil Peart passed, 2020, it seemed like, the opportunity for that maybe had kind of passed by. But it ended up, I joined a podcast to talk about Rush. And I really saw in that podcast that there is still as much appetite for this band as there ever was.
Sure.
Maybe more so, in fact, because new people keep coming in. Young people keep discovering this band. And I felt like, not only is the time not over, but new people coming in need some kind of like, Rush for dummies.
Right.
But I wanted also something that, the hardcore fans could appreciate. And, so it was a little bit of a line to walk between, something that's too inside baseball for people to understand and something that's just, the fans have heard this over and over and over and over again. So, I feel like I got the right balance.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, and like I said, I'm not all the way to the end of it, but I've been kind of picking and choosing some pages, you know what I mean, listening or reading various things. And the one thing that I do like the most is that it's not the typical Rush kiss-ass book. It's not the typical, this band has been great since we first heard them, and, they made trees sound interesting. They haven't, it's really not that kind of a book. I mean, there are some records in here that you really were like, maybe not,
Well, I mean, they have a really big, diverse catalog, and they always wanted to change on every record. Right. And, sometimes it ended up better than other times, they don't have anything where I'm like, oh my God, that's awful, turn that shit off.
Right.
They don't have anything like that. The worst thing I can say about any of their albums is there are some, like I would say like the lowest they get is like a B-.
Okay.
Could use improvement.
Sure.
That sort of thing. But they're such elite musicians and such craftsmen that I found that even if they made music I didn't like, I still had to kind of respect and appreciate that this is what they meant to do. Like there was nothing haphazard about it. Like everything they did was intended and very deliberate. So like Hold Your Fire, 1987, not my favorite album. But when I was writing this book, I went back and listened to everything all the way through,
Sure.
Including that album. I was like, again, this is not the first album I'll grab if I'm going to listen to Rush, but I had to concede, no, this is very thoughtful music. They put a lot of work into this. It's, flawlessly executed, like everything they ever did was flawlessly executed. That record wasn't for me. I have seen in the past some books about Rush that do get a little like, oh, they can do no wrong.
Right.
I don't think they appreciate that, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't know. I mean, if I were them, like that level of idolatry, that would feel to me like very hard to live up to. And,
Sure.
I would feel like constantly in danger of losing it. But I think why it hasn't been a problem for them is they were always like really down to earth guys who were really just about playing the music.
Right.
And there was not really ego involved, or you were never going to get one of them on stage in Boston punching the other one.
Right.
That was just never going to happen with these guys, I've always really appreciated that about them. They're not rock stars at all.
Mm-hmm.
So
Daniel, one of the things that I was impressed about, the presentation of this book, and, Chris held it up there a second ago, that this is a coffee table style book. And what I mean by that is there's a tremendous amount of photos in there, and flyers and passes and just all kinds of stuff. Where did you accumulate all of these artifacts to include, as photos in the book? Because it's endless. It's hundreds and hundreds of pieces of photographs and flyers and backstage passes, and anybody who has an interest in memorabilia, this thing has got it all. So are these artifacts your personal collection, or did people donate them, or did you
that was all
interwebs, or where'd you get it?
It was all found and sourced by the good people at Motor Books Quarto, whose job it was to source all that and track all that down. The one thing they did not do that me and the publisher secured was we got some photos from engineer Stephen W. Taylor during the Presto sessions that were just his personal photos, and he was like, "Here, take a couple."
Nice.
It was like fantastic, he took no money for it, and it was just, kind of as a kindness. That was one thing I found about everyone I interviewed for this book. Everyone I talked to were pretty much like, I don't like to do interviews, but for those guys, I'll do it.
Sure.
I haven't shown anybody all these pictures, but for those guys, I'll give you some pictures for the book. Just everybody really wanted to extend themselves because they felt very fondly about these guys who treated them all very well, treated them all very respectfully. Stephen W. Taylor, who engineered Presto, he wouldn't have kept all those photos of like them sitting around eating dinner.
Right.
It's been a good time for him. But and at the same time, he has the utmost respect for them as musicians. He really got what we were trying to do. But the majority of it was the publisher, but that contribution I felt was really important to have in there.
Daniel, there's kind of, at least to my ear and probably to a lot of people, there's definitive eras of Rush. There's obviously the 70s era, and then the 80s was very different, from like Grace Under Pressure-ish up. And then the later stuff I thought was kind of like mellowed out Rush, kind of like Rush Light sort of at the end. For you, as somebody that has obviously studied them, do you hear patterns? Do you hear them trying to take pieces of what other bands were doing and incorporate it into what they were doing? Or do you think that they were just completely unique and changing from time to time, from album to album?
Well, like in the 80s, I know that they were very kind of taken with, what was going on in New Wave at the time. So they worked a lot of synthesizers into their music, but you would never say that was New Wave music that they were making. They were just sort of like, oh, that's interesting what they're doing. Those people with the, triangular drums.
Right.
Let's see what we can do with that. And I think for them, it was just kind of like, let's dabble in this. Let's see where we can go with it. I never saw them like ever. Like literally there's nothing I can think of where I was like, oh, okay. So, that's their disco album.
Right.
Or they weren't like contrived in that way. The thing everyone loves to bring up, of course, is the like 30 seconds of rapping on the song Roll the Bones.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for which they will never be forgiven. And the worst, most atrocious thing ever to happen in North America, But again, it's like really that's the worst thing you can come up with is 33 years ago.
Right.
One thing once for 30 seconds, but I will say, this is not my first interview for this book. Some of these people not happy about the rapping. Like it's like it happened yesterday. They're still like, oh, there was rapping on. Oh God. But I don't know. They were forgiven eventually. So.
It's like Van Halen, doing keyboards and Jump. It's like, oh, how dare you? You're a guitar-driven band and you added keyboards.
Yeah, but every single person who said that, and I know this because I was in high school at the time, bought that album and played it 500 times a day. So
exactly.
I don't buy it. I'm sorry. People like to complain, but 1984 is a great album. You're just not You can't shit on it. It's not possible. You can try, but it's not gonna work.
Right.
Well, being the massive Rush fan as you are, and obviously putting out this book, how many times have you personally seen Rush in concert?
Once.
Just once.
Just once?
Yeah. Which puts me at a distinct disadvantage for like trying to measure myself against other Rush fans. Part of it is I have social anxiety disorder, and so going to like large packed stadiums is not always great for me.
All right.
But I mean, also it's like I own all the albums. I wrote a book about them, as you know, and the real thing is you can't really. I'm a fan. I'm absolutely a fan. There's this higher echelon, though, of Rush fans who I cannot compete with. Some of them have seen the band 120 times. Some of them have seen them 60 times. The most I ever saw one band, I think, was 3 times. Ever.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, and but these, they keep going back. It's like, let's do it again. And for most of us, I think, if a band we like is coming our way, but it's a 12-hour drive, you'd be like, oh, forget it. It's not going to happen. Not so for Rush fans. That's no problem. They will drive all 12 hours, see the show, drive back, go to work, and then go to the next town where where it is after that. So, I mean, it's a very high bar. So, no, I know I should have seen them dozens and dozens of times. And
I'm curious, which tour did you see?
Counterparts.
Oh, man, you caught them on a crap tour.
No.
Come on.
The opening band was Candlebox. So,
All
yes, in that sense, it was a crap tour. But no, everything was great. Everything was played flawlessly. It was probably the best sounding concert I had ever been to at the time. They played everything I wanted to hear. They never put on a bad show. I've never heard of them ever putting on a bad show, even if you went on like the Power Windows tour, for example,
right.
1985. The Fabulous Thunderbirds are opening. Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that song you just did, that says a lot. And they had to cut down all the songs, because you can't play all 11 minutes of Xanadu, and you had to get it down to 4 minutes. Still, I know people who saw them on that tour, and they're like, that was amazing. That was the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. So, the main thing is they always brought it to the people, and they always played a great show, and they just really cared about the product that they were bringing. So, even if you did see them on a tour that wasn't necessarily for your favorite album, it was always going to be a good show anyway.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, it just brings up an interesting point. With only seeing the band one time, how did you go about evaluating the live albums, which you do in the book? Do you like instinctively you would think you would compare them to what you actually saw live? Did you do that, or did you try your best not to do that because it was different eras of the band?
Well, like All the World's a Stage.
Mm-hmm.
That came out in 1976. So
right.
I was 7 years old at the time. So I have nothing to compare it to really. When Exit Stage Left came out, I was 12. So like probably the closest that they did to releasing a live album around the time I saw them would have been Different Stages. And Different Stages, to me, sounded literally exactly like the show that I saw.
Right.
It was actually for the Test for Echo tour, which was the one after Counterparts. But like a lot of the set list was the same. A lot of the songs were the same. And it was what I remember. I put it on, it starts playing. I'm like, damn, this is just like cracking right from the beginning. And, right down to, for most of the album, you can actually hear this one guy very aggressively in your left ear if you're listening on headphones. And that was sort of similar to the experience I had when I was there, like this one Yahoo, like back over there. yelling all this stuff at the stage, even though it's all the way down there and they can't hear you. You can tell from the energy of the crowd, and it really sort of feeds back to the band too. The thing I cannot compare it to is their Rush in Rio concert.
Sure.
Which I don't know if you've seen the video of that, is like insanity. I've never seen anything like that in my life. Because it's like 60,000 people in Brazil, outdoor show, and the whole crowd is just pogoing like 100% of the time and singing along with YYZ, which has no lyrics.
Right.
I've never seen anything like that in my life. There's nothing I could compare. And I mean, I've been to see Slayer. That was insane. It was a crazy show. I've been to some pretty wow, is it okay for me to be here? Like I might get killed at this show.
Right.
Like Pantera, and stuff like that.
Sure.
This is different. And, the energy and the enthusiasm is all there, but it's more joyful. And it's less about testosterone, rage. It's just this really happy thing. But I never before or since saw anything that was like the Rio concert. I've never seen anything like that in my life. Fire up YouTube and look for the recording of YYZ.
Right.
I've never seen anything like that in my life.
Well, speaking about celebrating Rush as a band and being uber fans and all, did you see the movie I Love You, Man?
Oh yes, absolutely.
So what's your thoughts on the scene where all they do is play Rush in the man cave and they go see Rush and they're just Rush fanatics going to see the show and playing faking like they're playing the bass and all this.
I thought it was 100% accurate. That's exactly how it is, both in like suburban basements and at the show. However, the stage they were playing on was like comically small, compared to like what their actual real stage show was like. But I know it was for the movie, and it had to be, also Rashida Jones, who played Paul Rudd's girlfriend in that, was very upset that he was ignoring her. What are you supposed to do at a concert? You watch the band, right? Right?
Right.
Is that what you do? So I don't know. Only I would get upset about that, but there we are.
I thought the part where Paul Rudd was playing the bass and he was playing, and she goes, "Are you sure you're playing the bass all the way up here?"
Yeah, it's right for him. No, I mean, I can remember, this sort of like camaraderie that you share with other Rush fans. It's hard to explain, but it's really not the same as with any other band, and, you go see, I don't know, the recently retired Aerosmith. I know that was always a great show. People were really, you're sort of part of this community as the show's going on with you and all the other Aerosmith fans. And Rush absolutely had that kind of a thing, but it was a lot more based around like air drumming and air guitar and air bass, where I think with Aerosmith, like people were more kind of like trying to vicariously be the rock stars. Like they wanted to be one of the Toxic Twins, where people who are appreciating Rush in that way, like have their own little imaginary fingerboard that, and they're really, really deeply into it and all that sort of thing. So I thought that was totally accurate, actually. Women go to see Rush, though. That, the idea that it's only a dude's band has not been true for many decades.
As I say, not at the shows I went to.
Even at that, many 30 years ago show that I went to, I dragged one of them there. So I know for a fact women go to Rush.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, dude, when you, I don't want to ask like real questions about stuff in the book, because people should buy the book. That's the first thing. People definitely should buy the book. But I did want to ask about one chapter or number that you wrote, which was A Show of Hands.
Yes.
I read it twice. I'm not sure that you liked it or didn't like it. I came out of it both times unsure of what you were trying to say with that. Can you define your thoughts on A Show of Hands?
I don't understand why it was made.
Okay.
it's you listen to it and it's like, well, they're saying it's a live album. It just doesn't have it doesn't have a lot of spontaneity.
Right.
All the other live albums they did, I mean, they did this. Okay, they did this one for the Grace Under Pressure tour.
Mm-hmm.
Really good performance, and it's only a couple of years removed from the one in Show of Hands. By A Show of Hands, I think that they were so kind of enslaved by like the pedals and triggers and samples, and all three of them said they were kind of like stationary objects on the stage by that point, and it was just not really that much fun at
right.
that. And when I hear A Show of Hands, I don't hear a lot of I don't hear a lot of humanity coming out of it. You don't get the sense of like, oh, it's just three dudes up there playing. The thing with them has always been like, wow, I can't believe this is just three guys making all this music. That's amazing. But most of the stuff on A Show of Hands, I would say sounds almost exactly like the studio versions.
Right.
To me, it's just like, so what? What have we accomplished here exactly?
Sure.
Having said that, I'm sure everyone who went to those concerts loved them, thought they were excellent, and are listening to this right now and wondering what the fuck my problem is.
I doubt that. Look, as somebody that was a casual listener of Rush, I bought it and I kind of thought the same thing. I remember buying it and I was like, I think I already have this. That was kind of my takeaway from it.
But I mean, the thing that they always tried to do was that they really wanted every album they made, even the live albums, to kind of break some new ground. That was really important to them.
Right.
They never wanted to make the same album twice. The closest to that they did, I would say, was A Show of Hands.
Right.
Where that was really the only thing they ever did where it really felt to me like they're just kind of repeating themselves here a little bit.
Sure.
But again, worst thing I can say about it is that.
Well, in your recollection, looking back, when did Rush first catch your ear?
You mean just like what was?
Yeah, where you kind of discovered them, and I like this band. About what age or where do you remember discovering Rush for the first time? And it was like, yeah, this is a thing that I kind of dig. I like this.
It was like junior high school when I sort of started just to become aware of them. They had some videos on MTV at the time, and I liked it. But
so is that what, 80s? Grace Under Pressure-ish?
80s, yeah. So Grace Under Pressure, Just an Early Warning, and Power Windows, The Big Money. And I'm like, these are good tunes. My drummer friend says this is amazing. But there's just something, I'm just not quite. Eventually, I heard the Counterparts. No, not Counterparts. I'm sorry, Chronicles. Forgive me. The Chronicles compilation, and I'm listening to them like, oh wow, okay, it starts with some of the earlier stuff. Then they get to the song "Free Will," Alex Lifeson's guitar solo, and that's it. And after that, my life was never the same again.
Right.
And I immediately was like, I must go all the way down this rabbit hole and never come out. I will never come out. And we're now like, I don't know, 35 years later, 40 years later, and I'm not out.
Right.
Yeah.
There it is.
Oh yeah, that's it. It's a good compilation. I mean, if I were like to recommend something to people just starting out, you could definitely do a lot worse than that one.
That's I know for me that's kind of my Rush go-to is I just go to Chronicles and it has everything that you want. And if you're not Rush Chronicles, and it's weird because most greatest hits generally suck. They just have the radio friendly stuff. But since Rush really wasn't a radio band per se, I mean they had some radio songs obviously, but as a not radio band, Chronicles over the 2 discs really does introduce you to everything you need. You really don't need anything else.
It's pretty solid. I have to, there are maybe like 1 or 2 songs I might have like swapped out for other ones, but for the most part, it's like this is pretty solid. I agreed with like most of the choices on it. It was definitely a good introduction for me. They left off YYZ. That's probably
right.
the worst thing I can say about it. But
that's probably just a timing thing, right? Because it's long and
they only had I think
right
so much
60 minutes or something on CDs at that point. Yeah,
right, exactly. But it did not take long after I heard that to just be like, I'll take everything. Sure. Will you give me everything? I want everything.
Right.
Yeah. And the whole catalog all the way through is just, it just goes through so many, like you were saying, there are so many different eras. And, but at the same time, each album is kind of different from the one before it. So when you're judging what the eras are, you have to kind of stand back from it and look at it in like 10-year increments.
Sure.
But even in those increments, like the albums were changing within them. I said it in the introduction, I say it constantly, but they never, like I said, they never made the same album twice. They were like, I think, offended by the idea of that and felt like the fans deserved more than just, like the easiest thing in the world for them to have done, Moving Pictures 2, the next album, just do more of that. And I think they were offended by the idea that they should just do the same thing over and over again.
Do you think that was them collectively, or do you think it was one member, probably Neil, that was the most against commercializing the band like that?
No, it was all three of them pretty equally. They were all pretty offended by the idea that they should compromise their vision at all for anybody. They almost got dropped by their label after their third album.
Right.
And, and the label is like, okay, you guys fucked up. With all this like science fiction shit. What the fuck are you doing? Next album, hits. We want hits.
Right.
The next album is 2112. That starts with a 20-minute song that takes up all of side one. That's all three guys together making that decision. And I think a lot of why their story is so compelling too is you have the dramatic structure is perfect because you've got the three musketeers who are being beset from around them by the press, just other hostile people in music, radio that didn't want to play them, and they just kept doing it anyway. They just kept hammering away at it.
Sure.
And eventually they became, what we know them as now. But they got precious little encouragement from anybody to do what they were doing. And my sense, and certainly from everything I read and everything, was that this was really a three-way split for these guys.
Okay.
There really wasn't anybody, there was no Perry Farrell.
Right.
I'm sorry. I've just been having so much fun with that since that happened.
Don't blame you. Because it's ridiculous. But
yeah, I'm sad we'll have to stop talking about it someday.
Well, let me ask you this, Daniel. And this has been probably the biggest surprise for me watching Rush. It is amazing to me that this band has gone 50 years at the top. I mean, literally, they've been at the top probably 45 of the 50 years. They've been a huge band. And yet they are still as mysterious as a new band for so many people. I mean, Getty has an autobiography. People still don't know any of the inner workings, and there's documentaries and everything. What do you think it is about them that they were able to so masterfully keep themselves private, except when they were doing music, and only share musical vision?
I think a lot of that probably had to do with when Neil came into the band, because John Rutsey, who was the original drummer, he was more of like sort of a flashy dresser and wanted to kind of present the band a little more rock and roll, a little more.
Sure.
Then he had to go. Neil Peart comes in. He's in a book like all the time, and is just not an extroverted person. As the lyrics to Limelight bear out, he loved to play. He loved performing at this very high level. but being surrounded by like lick spittles was not what he wanted. And I think he was like really distrustful of all that kind of adoration. And when the show is over and you go backstage and everyone is telling you how brilliant you are, I think he was just sort of naturally suspicious of that. And the other guys were just kind of these like sort of amiable, I don't want to say doofuses, but they were amiable guys who were also not really about putting a persona forward.
Right.
They were just kind of like, here we are, this is our music. Please just judge us on our music. That's all we want.
And in a way, and I'll point specifically to Alex. I wish they would have come out more as personalities. Watching Alex on like Trailer Park Boys, he was spectacular on that. He was funny. He was a real character. Yeah. And they really never showed that basically until they were retired.
Oh, a little bit before that, when they had this hiatus around the new millennium because of Neil Peart's family.
Yeah,
had gone through these tragedies, and when they came back together in 2002, I believe it was Getty said, we decided from that moment going forward, all the kinds of things that we used to say no to, we're going to say yes.
Okay.
But then they're on, Colbert Report. They're in I Love You, Man. They started like having an association with the South Park guys.
Sure.
But they had been involved with SCTV before. These are guys with a sense of humor. They're viewed as humorless by some,
right,
but they're not. One of the sound guys, Robert Scoville, who I interviewed for the book, I think he did their sound in the 90s. I'm sorry, I wrote all this. I should
right.
have it readily available. No, he was like, those guys were gut-bustingly funny. Like, we were not laughing at their jokes because they were paying us. Those were funny fucking jokes. Right. They were funny guys. And then they had this like almost like Three Stooges sort of repartee between them and everything, minus the physical violence.
Right.
But they were sort of like a comedy gang in some ways, in how they came off to the people around them. Which you don't hear that about a lot of other musicians, because a lot of other musicians, A, it's not true, and B, they don't want to be perceived that way. Like Glenn Danzig would never want to be perceived as funny. Like,
right.
Just radioactive. That's horrible. And there are a lot of, I would say, really pretentious musicians out there, especially in rock music, who are like, I must never be seen smiling. I must never be seen laughing. This will ruin the magic. This will ruin the mystery. Like Jimmy Page, I'm sure, would have loved it if he had never been photographed smiling.
Sure.
But unfortunately, we have a few photos out there. Yeah, these guys were just really down to earth, funny guys who people like to be around.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, Daniel, is there anything else about this book that we haven't touched on that you want fans to know about?
Yes. When I started writing this book, it was April of 2023.
Okay.
And a couple of months after that, I had to undergo surgery. That was kind of, it was pretty intense. And the guys at Motor Books, Quarto, moved the schedule around for me and allowed me to recover and all that and still finish the book. And finishing the book was a really big part of my recovery.
Okay.
I am so grateful to those guys for what they did for me and for allowing me to keep going with this and complicating their own schedule so I could do it, because this has meant so much to me to be able to do this. And to even be sitting here with you guys right now talking about this book is like bucket list stuff for me.
Nice.
So I really, really just want to say how grateful I am to them for seeing me through this, and I'm working on another book with them right now. In fact,
nice.
So it's been a very.
Can you say what it's about or not yet?
Iron Maiden at 50.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Boy,
he's
you
here.
you and Martin Popoff would be a hell of a writing party. Jeez, oh man.
Martin Popoff has generated this. Rush at 50 is my 7th book
Okay.
in 21 years. Martin has written, I think, like 150 books or something like that. And I must give him all the credit. You know, he's put the work in, he's put the time in. He certainly knows what the hell he's talking about.
Sure.
So I mean, if I'm wish.com Martin Popoff, I guess.
Dude.
Martin Popoff.
Dude, I've written 6 books, and I don't know how Martin does it. Some of those guys, Martin, Joel MacGyver, guys like that, I don't know how they can churn like that.
I asked Martin a few years ago because I was just, these books just are coming out like pop, 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 pop. And, I just messaged him. I'm like, how do you do, and he talked about like just, be working on one book while the next one is, he juggles a lot of different things. He has a lot of things going on all at the same time. So while one new book is coming out, the next one is in, wherever it is getting manufactured, and the previous, and he's thinking
right.
2 books, he's doing like, 9-dimensional chess.
Yeah. Well, and he has discipline that us normal humans don't have. Like I know I've talked to him about it because I've asked him too. I'd love to write more than I do, but I don't have that discipline. Like Martin told me once, he gets up, he writes 2 hours, just writes.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't do that.
No, I would probably be doing a lot better in my career and be further along if I had that kind of discipline.
Yeah.
And that kind of commitment to it. But I mean, like, I'm a pothead. I'm a fuck up, I'm never gonna be that guy. I'm 54 years old. I feel fairly certain this is probably like I'll have 8 or 9 books, maybe.
All right.
But no, I can't say enough about him, and he's earned all of it. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, dude, this book is seriously fantastic. It is Rush at 50. I'm gonna hold it up one more time so people can see it. It's green screening a little bit on the yellow, but it is out. It's out October 8th, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's out October 8th. The pre-orders are up now. The link is at the bottom of the screen here, and it'll be in the notes if you're watching this on a rebroadcast and not live. But this has been fun, man. Great book, man, and I look forward to finishing this one and reading the next one when it comes, man.
Thank you very much for having me, and I'll leave you with this last thought.
Okay.
It is totally acceptable to read that book on the toilet. That's all I'll say.
I'll store mine there. How's that?
There you go. Exactly. It's perfect. 2 pages for each section. It's
That's
like,
right.
okay, I'll read about this. Oh, okay, I'm done. Goodbye.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, Daniel. Well, we appreciate you taking some time out of your evening here on a Saturday night to entertain us and the masses. So, as a tradition, we always let the guests pick a closing song. So, is there a Rush song you'd like us to play out of this interview?
I would like you to play "Chemistry" off the Signals album, which to me is their most underrated song.
All right,
very cool.
Do that for you.
Thank you.
All right, well, go out there and pick up Daniel's new book, Rush at 50. Even if you're not a Rush fan, I think you'll dig it, and especially, like I said earlier in the interview, there is a ton of photos and
ticket stubs and memorabilia, everything.
Stuff, yeah. So you'll enjoy it just from that perspective alone. So anyway, we'll play some Rush here. So for Daniel. This is Rush with Chemistry exclusively here
on your classic metal show.
It's the album that changed everything, Metallica's Black Album. In Cause and Effect, Metallica, author Chris Aiken takes you back to the lead-up, the release, and the shockwaves that followed. Relive the moment that divided fans, reshaped heavy metal, and turned commercial radio on its ear. With insider stories and personal memories from rock critic and radio personality Chris Aiken, this book is a backstage pass to one of rock's most iconic moments. Get your copy now at chrisaiken.net or on Amazon. Don't miss out on this epic journey through heavy metal history.